Good evening and welcome back to the Irish Hotspur on this transfer deadline day evening, and I hope you are all well. I bring you here tonight to welcome Brennan Johnson to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Before we get into it, and I'll give you maybe my thoughts on why we need to sort of understand why we've signed someone like Brennan Johnson, do what 11,700 other passionate loyal Spurs fans have done before you, and smash that subscribe button. Now let's get into it. Of course, Tottenham have officially announced that we have signed 22-year-old Brennan Johnson from Nottingham Forest for a fee of around £47.5 million, no add-ons, with Forest receiving 10% of any future sale. Johnson has put pen to paper on a 5-year contract with an option to extend it by a further year, that if it is extended, it will keep him at the club until 2029. Now, my opinions on this signing: is this a signing that excites me or probably many of the Spurs fan base? No, I don't think it is. However, I do feel it is important to try and understand why we had to sign someone like Brennan Johnson, and it's not some exotic name from across the world that many Spurs fans woke up dreaming of this morning. Now, the biggest factor or driving force behind this deal is that Brennan Johnson qualifies as homegrown for Premier League registration. Whether we agree with it or not, it's important to try and understand what I'm about to say. When you register a 25-man squad, 8 minimum have to meet the criteria of homegrown. Now, there's different criteria on that. You can go and research that yourself. Now, of course, you can register a smaller squad as a workaround, but why would you put yourself at a disadvantage to your competitors, who the majority of them are already operating at a 25-man strong squad? We see that with the teams at the top of the Premier League, right? They've got 25-man strong squads, and we have to get to that point somehow. And in order to get to that point, we have to improve the quality of our homegrown players. Now, as it stands, our current homegrown quota currently stands at 7. You've got Ollie Skip, who, look, he's just not good enough. He's nowhere near the level of Basuma, Sarr, Bentancur, Maddison. You've got Davies. He's just never been good enough, in my opinion. Ryan Sessegnon, never good enough and never fit. Fraser Forrester, 1 year left on his contract. He won't be around after next season due to his age. Alfie Whiteman, Brandon Austin, never ever going to play a minute at Tottenham Hotspur. So that leaves you with only James Maddison. None of the homegrown quality player, or none of the homegrown players, bar James Maddison, they're just not good enough. And it's a problem that I've spoke about for a long time that needs to be addressed. A lot of our homegrown players are the deadwood that we speak of that needs to lead this club. Half of them are homegrown players, and we have to get rid of them. If we want to move on from them, we have to sign people like Brennan Johnson, like Conor Gallagher, who's rumoured, people like that. We have seen time and time again with a lot of these guys that have played in cup competitions, and they're usually playing them because they're not good enough to play in the first team. We get knocked out. And then when they end up coming into the first team because of injuries and suspensions, you can see a distinct drop in quality in terms of the play that we were used to watching before they came in. A lot of performances of players that were performing before they come in, all of a sudden when they're slotting in beside them, their performance completely drops. And simply with a lot of the signings that we've made over the last few years, some of these players just don't have the footballing brain that some of the other guys have, but also the technical ability to be able to play with them on the football pitch. And that's where we keep seeing these breakdowns. So for me, we absolutely have to get on top of this issue, and we have to address it. And also, when they do come in, because of their lack of quality, results end up taking a hit, and it just kills all momentum. And we've seen that over the last few years, right? We've seen it under Jose Mourinho, top of the league. All of a sudden, injuries happen. A lot of these guys form the team, and then we end up dropping off. We don't even make Champions League qualification. Conte comes in, a little bit of an upsurge, finishing Europe. The following season, we started off with a strong squad. Everyone was talking about making changes, and then as soon as we made changes, and some of these guys came in through suspension or injuries, all of a sudden performances drop off and another manager's out the door. And a lot of these homegrown players have been a big part of that because they form a quarter of the squad. They ain't good enough to be here. They're stealing the living, and they're a massive part of the deadwood issue. So we have to absolutely get on top of it. Also, when you look at it, we've sold Harry Kane this summer, Harry Winks this summer, loaned out Dane Scarlett, Troy Parrott, and Alfie Devine. And it's rumored that Harvey White could be leaving the club this evening as well. So, it is an issue, like I keep saying, that we have to address and we have to get on top of. There's a lot of discussion around as well. Is Johnson Ange's number one choice? Now, I don't really want to keep reverting back to Kane, but this is sort of relevant. When we saw Kane and Tottenham, and look, us fans as well, we understand you cannot replace Kane like for like. I feel Ange on this one has had his say in terms of preference, in terms of replacement to Kane, that he wants someone that's versatile, that can play all across the front three in any of the positions that he's asked, a bit like some of the other players that we have in them in choices that we currently have. But however, I do think that Ange Postecoglou has had to compromise. And what I mean by that, because of the homegrown issue, Ange has said what he wants in terms of preference. And the club have come back and said, okay, but look, you can have what you're asking for, but it has to be someone that meets the homegrown criteria. Now, that automatically reduces 90% of your market, right? So you've got 10% of the market to operate in. And I think Ange has worked with the club on this one, sort of sacrificed and as I've gone with it and picked someone that qualifies for homegrown. So on this one, I think credit to Ange for working with the club. Is it his number one target overall? I think if the European market was available to us, I'd question that. But in terms of what was available to us in the homegrown market, I think Ange Postecoglou would probably be very happy with someone like Brennan Johnson. Now, let's get on to the player himself and why I think Ange Postecoglou might like him as a sign. And when I look into Brennan Johnson a bit deeper, to be fair to the guy, his performances were actually fairly consistent for a 22-year-old in the Premier League, which, sometimes with young guys, you see some great games, some bad games, and there's a lot of sort of up and downs with them. He came out with 8 goals and 3 assists in a struggling Nottingham Forest side. I think he was their second top scorer. Now, obviously, the assist, he's got a lot more work to do in that regard in terms of, crossing the ball, being able to link up with people, playing people through and expanding his vision and stuff like that. That clearly tells me he's got a lot of work to do in that regard. But 8 goals and 3 assists on the struggling side, I suppose when you look at it on the whole, is actually a good return for a 22-year-old. We also forget as well, and I've forgotten this when I've spoken about the guy, that Forest signed 20 players last summer. And Brennan Johnson was one of the only survivors of that promotion-winning squad. And I suppose that probably, not only a survivor, but also, a consistent starter all season long, despite the huge turnover of players at Nottingham Forest. So I suppose that probably does speak a little bit to his quality, I suppose. So I suppose we can't really overlook that as well. Now, what I also think Ange really likes about him is he's putting in decent numbers for a struggling side. And I reckon Ange Postecoglou looks at him and thinks, you know what, just with a little bit of coaching, a little bit of what's the right word? Or what's that word when you coach someone? I can't think of it anyway, forget it. Mentor, that's it, mentor. That he can mentor him and that he can get him from a player of potential to a player fulfilling his potential. I reckon Ange Postecoglou reckons he can get a lot more numbers out of him in terms of goal scoring and assists. But another thing is he had the third highest most turnovers in the opposition third in that Nottingham Forest squad. And that's one thing Ange Postecoglou will absolutely love. As we know, his play is relentless out of possession, while players can't stand still and fall back into shape like they were asked to do or wanted to do over the last few years. Now they have to get on the front foot and actively go and press that ball and turn it over. And that is an attribute that Ange Postecoglou will look in every forward player he brings in here, what they're going to contribute out of possession, whether we like it or not, whether we think it makes a difference or not. That is the reality of it. And on that regard, he suits that as well, out of possession. So not only in possession, I think Ange thinks he can make it better, but also out of possession, I think Ange likes his work rate and his energy. Now, the signing is absolutely a huge risk. Brennan Johnson, he's still raw. He needs developing, and there's a lot of question marks around link-up play, some of his technical ability in tight spaces, stuff like that. So it's a signing for me that we have to show patience to. I get that a lot of people find it underwhelming. I get a lot of people may not understand the homegrown sort of issue, and there might be a bit of outrage because look, let's face it, the ambition of the signing, even myself, I would have liked us to show a bit more ambition in the signing in the forward area. So I get there might be a lot of skepticism. However, criticize the board on it all you want, no problem. But out for the player himself, he is going to need us as fans just to show the player himself patience. Now, also, when it comes to the fee, look, it is what it is. I get it's a huge fee, and it could be a situation where we very well in a couple of years could be sitting there talking about him in the same breath as Richarlison and Ndombele. In Richarlison's case, he's shown that if you don't have an all-round solid game, to jump up from the bottom half of the Premier League to the top half of the Premier League, where you need to be on it every single game, not every couple of games. He just doesn't have it. He's found it very, very hard. All he can do is put the ball in the box, let him go and head it. He can't control the ball. He can't lay it off. He can't link up with him. And Brennan Johnson is going to have to prove that he can make that step up. And look, unfortunately, he's coming into a situation where he ain't just going to receive the adulation of the fans, I don't think. I do think someone like Brennan Johnson will have to earn that, and hopefully he will. But look, it is a massive, massive risk. There's no hiding about it. But Ange Postecoglou has identified him in the sort of reduced market available to him. And if Ange thinks that this guy is the guy that he's pinpointed that he can bring in here and get a tune out of, look, I'm all behind that. I trust Ange Postecoglou. Although I would have liked to seen us go after a striker, be a bit more ambitious. But what I will say is it does fit into our recruitment. A lot of our recruitment the last couple of years have been 25 or under. So it does suit that. We're not going rogue outside of the recruitment on this one. However, I would have preferred an actual number 9 coming in the door. I think Brendan Johnson coming in puts an end to us bringing in a striker. I would have preferred an out-and-out goal scorer coming in the door. But look, that's mainly down to it's what I've used to over my whole entirety of a Spurs fan. It's what I've witnessed all my life at Tottenham Hotspur. We've always had that striker up front. In fact, we've always usually had a couple when I was growing up that scored you goals on a regular basis consistently. I don't think we have that in our squad, and I think that could be a weakness that might come back and haunt us. However, let's wait and see. I don't buy into this that Tottenham didn't want a striker. I do think we wanted a striker, or else we wouldn't have went in inquiring about Gift Orban. I think we realised very, very quickly, for a number of reasons, that the domestic leagues are starting. So any striker we go in for, there's a premium. Everyone knows we have 100 million burning in our pocket. So there's also going to be a premium because everyone will want a chunk of that so that they can do business. So there's going to be premiums left, right, and centre. Also, because there's a rarity of strikers, out-and-out goal scorers in this modern game. That's why Haaland went for big money to City. That's why Kane went for big money to Bayern Munich. And I think we found out very, very quickly, that there's also a premium on that. So when you add all them 3 premiums up, we're getting absolutely ripped off. And that comes around to the poor planning of not really having a concrete plan in place when you sold Harry Kane. But look, the homegrown issue is the main reason why we're at where we're at with this Brennan Johnson signing. Me personally, like I said, I feel a bit underwhelmed. I would have liked to see a bit more ambition, but on no means am I writing this player off. And I think under Ange Postecoglou will fancy himself mentoring and coaching the best out of him. And I think, look, let's wait and see what happens. I'm definitely not going to write it off. Many, I dare say on Vicario, on the likes of Solomon and people like Udogie, people like that. But since, they've come good. So I think it's just going to take a bit of getting used to adjusting to this new sort of recruitment model. They're maybe not the names that we would have first imagined coming in here, but I do think, we have to give it an opportunity. And like I said, it's improving the homegrown quota, so that's a plus for me as well. But look, the fact that we sort of got the negotiations all done with nice and early, hopefully now it means it frees us up to get another 1 or 2 deals in before the deadline window closes. But guys, please let me know your comments below on your thoughts on what I had to say about the homegrown issue, and do you agree that we had to sort of get it done? But also your thoughts on the signing in general. Am I being a bit harsh by not sort of being overawed by this signing, or really excited by this signing? Please do let me know. And if you think I've missed anything on Brennan Johnson's game that that maybe I haven't seen that I should take into consideration, or even if you think he's going to go on to become a top player and you think we've got an absolute good signing here, please let me know in the comments below. But that's it from your boy Dave. I'll see you again very, very shortly. I'm hoping, with a new signing. But either way, myself and Jack will be back with a nice deadline day stream later on tonight. Of course, followed up by match day festivities tomorrow. So make sure you join us for that. As always, come on, you Spurs. In big hands we trust. We never stop. Everyone.